Hey guys, Dr. Ruth Roberts, the creator of the original Crockpet diet, and I am in gorgeous Guar, Oregon, which is up on the coast. And if you guys haven't seen the western coast, for all you folks that live back there in South Carolina, it is a whole different beast. And we've been having an amazing time. Mary Jo and I started out in Seattle and drove down to see some friends for the eclipse, so we got to see it first. And what I hadn't realized was that there's actually an hour of time that elapsed between when we saw it in Oregon and when you guys probably saw it in Charleston and anywhere in between. So that was an amazing time, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too and got to see it. Really one of the most amazing, I know I keep saying that, but it really was a stunning sight, and makes us realize how small we are in the world sometimes. So it's a lovely 67 degrees, and enjoying that very much. And Jennifer and everybody watching, thank you so much for sharing the video. That helps us get the message out. So got a couple of questions from folks today. Michelle on the Crockpet community wrote in and asked, she's got a little Chihuahua. She's just finally converted onto full Crockpet diet, and dog's doing really well. And did that after some GI issues. Everything's beautiful, but she's not sure if her pup's losing too much weight, and she thinks that probably that's the case. So somewhere in the past, there's body condition scoring chart from the World Small Animal Veterinary Association. And so ideally what you want to be able to do is from the top looking down, see a nice waist. So that's a little bit of an exaggeration. And then from the side, here's the dog's chest, and it should tuck up towards the backbone. And that's how you know that, and that you can feel over the top of the ribs, and without very much pressure, you know that you can feel the ribs, and that's how you know that your dog is at a perfect weight. Cats are a little bit more difficult, but really that same guideline as far as being able to look from the top and see a nice waist, and then looking from the side and seeing that cut up towards the back, that helps quite a bit and let you know you're in the right spot. It's interesting to me, over the years, people have just as much difficulty seeing that their pet is too heavy and or too thin. So that's always a good way to start gauging it at home, is to look at that body condition scoring chart. And then the other thing is if you take a picture of your pet from the top and from the side, so you're in that down shot, and then from the profile, and attach it to this post. If you're not sure, then just post it up, and I'll comment and let you know kind of where things are. Because sometimes we've gotten so accustomed to seeing our pets be heavy that becomes normal. And so it's really difficult for people to know what normal is if you haven't really thought about that hard. And that's the other thing people tell me as well, is that the veterinarians they've seen in the past will say, oh, your dog's good, when in reality it's a Labrador that needs to lose 10 pounds. So what we visually come to accept as normal often isn't. And being obese, as in humans, for dogs and cats, that actually creates health issues. So fat stores inflammatory molecules, or interleukins, and so if we're able to help these animals lose weight, then their body level of inflammation goes down tremendously. So that's, aside from the wear and tear on the joints, that's what's important. And in fact, I was reading this week that they are beginning to notice that even in Neanderthal people, they see signs of osteoarthritis in the knees, which is fascinating because, I think to be an obese Neanderthal was probably quite a feat. So these people don't have other skeletal markers of obesity, but they are seeing osteoarthritis. And so what they're beginning to believe is that often it was something in the diet that created inflammation, or a disease like rheumatoid arthritis that's an autoimmune type disease that causes destruction of the joints. So that's kind of the fascinating thing. So they're beginning to think that even then people had ate certain things, and granted at that point, it was sort of eat what you could find, but they were eating some things that created systemic inflammation. So pretty cool there, and that sort of parlays back into the next question I'm going to answer. And Kristen was asking about her pup developing nausea and occasional vomiting on Crockpet diet. So her dog has stage 1 kidney disease, and so she switched to Crockpet to help reduce the strain on the kidneys. And I think she's feeding the lower protein version. So that, and my colleagues will tell you, go, feed that low protein diet even to a dog that's got very, very early disease. Kristen's also started giving quercetin, which I think is just one of the best supplements we can offer for kidney disease. And but what I would say is this: she has noticed that it's worse with the beef version of the diet, and so she's not quite sure what to do. So that's the upside of Crockpet, is that if your dog or your cat has had GI issues, you can break it down into, one protein, one carbohydrate, one or maybe two vegetables, and then that way you can figure out what the issue is. So maybe it's the beef. She seems to do better on turkey. Pork is a very inexpensive protein alternative, especially things like pork tenderloins. Lamb is a reasonably inexpensive alternative. Fish, depending on where you are. So you can rotate through all of those things. Chicken and turkey often cross-react as far as antigenicity. So if your dog is sensitive to chicken, sometimes you can get away with feeding turkey, but often not. So just kind of start keeping a food journal too, because that's very helpful. Now the other side of the coin is, and what she was asking about specifically, is whether the brassica vegetables may be causing some of this. And that's very possible as well. So foods contain things called FODMAPs, which are fermentable oligomonosaccharides and polyols, which is a mouthful. But essentially what happens is this: so fermentable is the key word here. If your gut bacteria is a little bit whacked out, or if you truly have sensitivities to FODMAPs, then you can eat these foods, and even though they're good foods like the brassica vegetables or beans or things of that nature, if you're sensitive to those components of food, then yes, you're going to have reaction, and it stinks. So as I have shared with you in past episodes, I have SIBO, and so part of getting better from SIBO was using a specific carbohydrate diet and a low FODMAP diet, and that really pretty well takes most food out of the picture, which gets a little boring. But the upside is that as the gut heals, then I'm able to reintroduce things. So for instance, blackberries are high FODMAPs, go figure. So is cauliflower, go figure. And a month ago, I could not eat either one of those foods. Now I can eat a small amount of blackberries at a whack, and that's all beautiful, because I got to tell you, there are blackberry bushes here that are actually the scourge of farmers, but golly, are the blackberries good. They're sun-ripened and just fabulous. So that's something to be very cautious of. Beans, which is a component of the standard recipe, the Crockpet recipe, are high in lectins, and if you're sensitive to lectins, that's going to make life unhappy as well. So what I often tell people to do is to just break it down to one protein, one vegetable, maybe one brassica vegetable, and then reduce the amount of brassicas, because they do tend to be higher in FODMAPs, to maybe, instead of 3 cups, maybe 1 cup. The other option is to take it all the way down to 0, get things chilled out, and that's never a bad idea. Get them calmed down so that you can see what really is an issue. And by doing that, instead of waiting to see actual vomiting, maybe you notice much more subtle symptoms like gassy or gurgliness, kind of swallowing and doing funny things, and all that good stuff. So that's part of the GI rotation and elimination diet as well, breaking it down into simple things so it's easy to identify, is this food good? Is this food not good? So that's where I would start, and I would take beans out as well, just because the goal is to get your pup as comfortable as possible, as quickly as possible, Kristen, and then start reintroducing things so that you can see what's going on. So if you've noticed that things are worse with beef, definitely take that out of the picture. Use pork, use turkey, and then maybe try some lamb. That often doesn't have any issues. The other thing that's fascinating is that many dogs and people will react to conventionally fed beef but not grass-fed beef. And so the kicker there is that conventionally fed beef or pork or chicken is a grain-fed beef. And so if you have grain sensitivities to either corn or wheat, that can create some major issues. So one way to kind of avoid that is to go with extremely lean cuts of beef, so things like London broil, sirloin steak, and that may reduce things significantly enough that it's no longer an issue for beef. But remember, the kind of top 5 antigens when we talk about conventional food sensitivities are chicken, beef, used to be soy, although a lot of soy got pulled out of dog food. Corn is still a major one because that's in the vast majority of dog foods. And wheat, not so much anymore because, again, it got pulled out of most conventional dog foods. The thing to remember about corn is that it has a protein called zein protein, Z-E-I-N, and it behaves similarly to gluten. So even though corn is a gluten-free food, if you have sensitivities to that protein, it is not happy, and boy, it's just miserable. So I think that's part of why we see a lot of food sensitivities in dogs and cats, because something like 60% of the vast majority of dog and cat foods are made up of corn. So corn's not a bad food, but if you're sensitive to it, it's not fun. So that's kind of what I've got for you guys today. And Sally, good to see you. The eclipse was stunning. And out here in Oregon, we actually got a crystal clear day and just had a ball watching it. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So have you guys got questions you can think about that I can answer for you? I think there was one other that popped up. As a follow-up to lymphangiectasia, which we were talking about last week. So that's a really serious disease as far as symptoms go. So protein loss, the animal gets really emaciated and thin. And so again, looking at what the dog is eating, this is where we're going to pull out all of the FODMAPs, so the fermentable fibers and things of that nature. The trick there is that the good bacteria need fiber, digestible fibers, to be able to survive and thrive and overcome the bad guys. And in specific, what we're looking for are bifidobacteria. And so with any GI disease, whether it's this lymphocytic plasmacytic disease called lymphangiectasia, whether it's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, inflammatory bowel disease, chronic diarrhea, blah, 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 all of that stuff, we want to get the bifidobacteria species happy. So probiotics are essential as far as getting the good guys back in so that they're taking over and doing the work. But if we don't feed those guys, then we're just, we're pouring. It's like pouring gasoline into a car with a hole in the tank. So you can get somewhere, but you never quite get get up to speed, if you will. Plus, because you've got this leak of gasoline, there's always, the chance that the car is going to catch fire. So that's leaky gut syndrome. So that's where using specific types of fibers become important. And it's also where it's difficult because you've got to kind of experiment and figure out what can my animal tolerate, what helps without creating more GI symptoms. And so in my own experience, one of the two big guns they're recommending for people as far as prebiotic fibers go that have GI sensitivities are Galacto-oligosaccharides, and that sorry, I hope that didn't blank out, but that comes in a product called Bimuno, or BI2MUNO, and it comes in these nice little sachets, and it was a fiber that I was able to tolerate relatively quickly when all of the others were just blowing me out of the water. So what I would suggest is, and this is something you can find on Amazon, I had difficulty finding it in a local store, but what I would suggest is starting with literally for, say, a tiny dog, a 10-pound dog, just a teensy pinch. For maybe a 50-pound dog, maybe a quarter of a teaspoon, eighth of a teaspoon. And the goal is to start really, really low and work your way up. Again, looking for subtle signs of issues. More gas, stool starts to loosen up, things of that nature. And to give you frame of reference, it may take a week to 2 weeks to get up to full dose. And so for a dog, at a 50-pound dog, maybe that's half a teaspoon twice a day. So the other thing I'll tell you about this stuff is that it will suck water in, so you want to seal it off pretty quickly with a paper clip or bull clip or something, because it comes in a little kind of mylar packet. The other one that's highly recommended is partially hydrogenated guar gum. And guar gums often cause GI symptoms, so they're something I can't tolerate. And in fact, I could not tolerate this to start with, although now that things are better, once I get 3 weeks of good GI happiness, I'm going to start adding that back in and see if I can tolerate it now. So as I said earlier, couldn't eat blackberries 3 weeks ago without undue consequences, but I can now, which is awesome. So that's the deal, is that getting things to heal up helps tremendously. The other thing that has been tremendously helpful and that we forget about is psyllium husks. We think about it in terms of animals that have had constipation, but it also is a prebiotic fiber. And then the other upside is that for animals that have had kind of icky, sort of soft, not quite normal stools, it may actually firm things up quite a bit. And so start with, again, just a smidge. So just literally a pinch for a 10-pound dog, and maybe a quarter teaspoon for a 50-pound dog, and kind of play with the dose until things are just right. So all of this stuff is going to be sort of feeling your way through it. And that's why, Kristen, it's going to be important to kind of back down, super simplify the recipe, and then add things back in as you're sure it's working. So that's what I know for today. And I hope you guys are having an awesome week. And we'll get a link to the body condition scoring chart for you, so you'll have access to that. If you're not sure about is your pet too heavy, too thin, just right, again, post pictures. Take one from the top, so standing over the top of your dog, so we can see, or cats, to see if there's a waist or not a waist. And photographing cats is a challenge, no kidding. And then again from the side to see if we've got that nice tucked up waist or whether we've got a rectangle going on. And happy to comment and guide you guys through figuring out if your pet's too heavy or just right. So that's what I have for you this week. Any questions at all that you guys can think of that I'm not seeing? I think we've got things covered. So have a wonderful week. Be back in Charleston next week, and we'll send in your questions, and we'll figure out something else exciting to talk about. Until then, remember, your pet's best health starts in the bowl. Thanks very much for joining, and we'll see you next week.